I just want to give you a quick update on what's going on with this Grom chopper build here. This guy. It's starting to get to that point where I'm starting to fall in love with it. It's coming together, and I always seem to get to this point with motorcycle builds so far that I just fall in love with all of them at some point. There's so much to appreciate, you know? And so, especially when you put in a lot of hard work, there's a lot to appreciate. You're kind of forced to appreciate it. Somebody's got to. So the most obvious thing is this electronics box right here is done. And there'll be a video coming out on that on Sunday, which is a couple days from now. That, I like the way that lines are looking on that thing. It looks pretty cool with the backbone showing out on the top like that. That's pretty sweet, man. Other stuff, we've been doing the wishbones here. I mentioned when I did this stuff originally, put this wishbone on here, we sort of temporarily put these braces in here, and this one was up here. I've moved it down here so it's closer to the wheel. Because basically, ideally, we want these things as close to the wheel as possible to provide this section down here as much strength as possible and as much stability as possible. And then speaking of which, down here, if you remember when we installed this brake caliper here before, we sort of had things set up in here, and I thought it was cool. I had this sort of brace thing that I had welded this thing in just on the back side here. Thought that would work. On the stock Grom, this caliper bracket and everything, this all feeds into, there's this nice aluminum bracket here that all feeds into the axle here. It all runs through there, and then the caliper sits off of that. And I don't need to reinvent that wheel, so I'm trying to make this thing work. And so there's just this little block keeps this caliper from just rotating all over the place. We need to utilize that somehow, and so I had just made this little, this is just like the stock version. I just made my own version that goes on the frame, and it meets up with this block like so, and holds that thing in place. But because we have this hardtail frame and our adjustment right here moves back and forth, and then this thing is at an angle, you'll see that was a problem. That resulted in every time if you move this thing back and forth, I mean basically this block got jammed in there, and you couldn't actually adjust the wheel back and forth, and therefore you couldn't adjust the chain on the bike. So that was problematic. So I had to come up with this new thing. So I got a slot here, and this thing is now on a threaded bolt sort of stud on the back here, so this can move up and down, and it can also rotate a little bit like that. So when you adjust the chain, adjust the wheel back and forth, you also have to adjust this slightly. But yeah, it's basically like that. Still need some washers and stuff like that on there, but that's basically like that. And speaking of washers, spacers, other stuff I need to be working on. We're doing a lot of just fine detail stuff, just sort of revisiting some things here lately. And so some of the other stuff I'm working on is spacers for the tank here. I need to make some more spacers for that. I've already made them for the tank up here, but it's just these little aluminum spacers like this, which I of course am making myself out of a little aluminum rod here on the lathe. And so that takes some time to do on the lathe. You know, give me a couple hours, we'll have 4 more spacers, which is what I need for this tank. It's got 4 mounting points on it. And I've also got to cut out little rubber grommets, little isolators for this tank to keep it from vibrating and all that stuff, which shouldn't take me too long. And then some other cool stuff. On this bike we've got this is the air filter that came with this bike. This is an aftermarket thing that somebody just threw on here on the throttle body. It has absolutely nothing on there, and so I'm gonna do a separate video on this eventually, but this is just sort of a preview because there's more to this. But this thing is gonna fit on here like this, approximately like that, and then this will be set out like that. Basically, I have to make a bracket to hold this thing and whatnot, and we also need to make a bracket for some other electronic stuff associated with this. But I like this, man. I like the way that looks. I think that's gonna be pretty sweet. And then there's gonna be some seat stuff after this. I gotta start working on the seats right now. I've already kind of made that. I've started on it. I've got the pan here. It's the very basis of our seat. There's a lot more to it after that. But I'm gonna try and make a leather seat, and I think that's gonna be pretty cool. First time working with leather. And there'll also be some cool stuff with that seat that I'm planning on. The design for that is gonna be pretty sweet, I think. It's gonna add a lot to the character of the bike. And then of course the front end, we've got to revisit this because that is far from complete. We need to figure out the brake caliper mount up here. We've got to finish up our geometry and stuff. The length of this spring and everything could still shorten at this point, and this thing The front end here part could all change. I wanted to wait and revisit that thing because I just wanted it on its wheel basically. And I wanted to revisit that. Once we had the tank and all this stuff in place, I wanted to get an idea for how much extra weight there was going to be on the bike before we really went back and revisited that. So I still want to finish the seat and get that stuff sorted, all the significant weight things on the bike, and we'll go back and revisit that front end. And we also need to do the fender on the back, and the fender is going to be a tough one on this one because there's nothing off the shelf I can buy that I am aware of or that I have found for these little tiny Grom wheels. So I need to I'm gonna make it out of fiberglass because that's something I can do. Making it out of metal, I don't have the right tools for that. Once we got that fender on there, I'm thinking sissy bar. We need a sissy bar. I'm thinking like a short sissy bar, not some crazy tall, long sissy bar, but like a short little sissy bar on the back here that goes over the fender, strengthens all that stuff up. I think that will be very cool, and we might actually end up mounting some taillights on the sissy bar. That would also be a nice little feature. But then you can strap something to the back of the bike and travel along with it. So maybe go camping with a little Grom chopper, huh? I am very happy with how this has turned out so far. Look forward to that video coming up. Like I said, how all this thing came together. This is a lot of work to put this together. There was a lot of thinking in terms of how it was designed. Things that are inside the box had to be put inside there before I enclosed the box. And so I had to really think hard on that one. So that's a good video to check that one out and how that came together. It's pretty neat. It's more complex than it looks. So I just thought you guys would like this update on the Grom and see what's going on behind the scenes here. There's a lot of like little nitpicky things that I'm working on at the moment. Nothing that I can really make into a single video. So that's why I'm giving this sort of update and a general update on what's going on. I hope this stuff is inspiring to somebody. I hope someone goes, hey, this is super cool. I'm gonna do something like that on my bike. Take a little piece here or there. Financially, for me, this thing is a very questionable decision because I'm putting a lot of time into a very cheap bike to make this thing. But really for me on the hoopty-doodle stuff on this channel, it's more about the creative aspect of the build. And so I always like to try and start with the cheapest possible materials so that I am, in the end, I can go through my whole process of making something creative, like getting this vision out of my head and into reality, you know? Because I've got a lot of ideas up here and a lot of things I'd like to make. And so it's really all about just getting that stuff out there as cheaply as possible because I don't have the financial resources to go, hey, let's start with a really valuable bike and chop that thing up and then make something creatively cool about it. You know? Just because I need to make something doesn't mean I need to spend as much money as possible. That's how we end up with these really cheap custom things or whatever, because that's the only way that I can financially do it. Whether that's a good idea or not, I don't know. If I started with a Harley, maybe this would be worth some serious money when I'm done. But because I started with a Grom, I don't know how much it's gonna be worth when I'm done. I question whether it'd be worth all the time I invested in it, that's for sure. But I'm very happy with it nonetheless because I'm able to like make something that I really want to make. And if you look at me, I'm getting old, people, and so I only have so much time left, but I still have a lot of ideas and things I want to make. So I got to try and maximize and do as much as I can with as little money as possible. This is how we end up with these cheap bikes. That's the random information you didn't need to know, but I do appreciate you guys watching these videos because the more you watch them, the more people watch them, the more financial resources I can get from YouTube, whatever. Hopefully we can do even cooler bikes, more bikes, because I can do them faster. The more money I had, the faster I could do these builds, basically. And it's partly why these things take so long. It's because I'm waiting for money to show up so I can actually do them. And so anyways, that's it. That's what's going on around here. Thanks for watching.